Okay, so we're just waiting for the recording to start, are we, Kaya?
The recording light's on, Peter, so you're good to go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this special edition of the Risk and Assurance Committee. The primary purpose of the committee meeting today is to consider and, if thought fit, to recommend to the Council that it approve the annual report. You've got a copy of the most recent draft of the annual report as at, I think, Monday, and I got sent through to me, but haven't had a chance to open about half an hour ago, an updated audit report. Brendan, I wonder if the best way to do this would be to frame up how you want to attack the meeting today. I imagine that we'll then get Bruno to speak. I assume Bruno's on the line. And then I'll get you and Graham, Brendan, to respond to the points that the auditors have made. Then we can have a look at points arising from the annual report, and then we can consider the recommendation. Is everyone happy with that approach?
Yeah, I will just point out Bruno's not online. So I've got an email of what's changed in this report compared to the draft one he presented. So I'll talk to those points.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. I'm surprised to hear that. Bruno sent me a text or a voicemail last night to say that he was going to be online, but that's absolutely fine. Why don't you then talk us through the changes to the audit report?
Yep.
Because that's the key, isn't it, to then considering the annual report?
Yes, that's probably correct. Okay, so the key changes, as Ben has pointed out to me, on page 8 of their document, there's a blurb on key accounting judgments been added, so that's the top one, and the quality of the draft annual report. They've put some comments around that as well, which weren't in the last one, because obviously they hadn't looked at the draft annual report at that point, and the accounting judgments, because they looked at the draft annual report, they hadn't looked at the accounting judgments in that, so they've added some points around that. In terms of the control findings, so this is the management letter points, they used to be called. There was a couple of, as we pointed out in the meeting last week, there was a couple of items where we thought there was the ability to get rid of them because we believe we'd done enough. They have gone, so the policies overdue has been updated to reflect the fact that we adopted the fraud or prevention of fraud and corruption policy last meeting.
Yeah.
And the procurement policy was actually done in July this year. The metered water issue where there was no evidence of review, I was able to provide them the evidence of review using Flemingly. They were happy to take that one off. Sensitive expenditure, as Tanya pointed out, they've changed that bit to a new as opposed to reoccurring because there's different people and different sensitive expenditure. It's not the same people all the time. And they have added one additional point around the rating revaluation, which is on page 18 of their document, about found assets. And I had a chat to Emma about this morning. So that's just to do with the fact that we had a number of new assets that were recorded as found in the rating valuation. A lot of that came from the changes in the data standards. So some assets, for example, a barrier or a guardrail, where historically it was treated as one thing, under the new standards, the ends of those are now separate assets. So they got treated as found because obviously they already existed. So the date wasn't they were brand new, they were old. And they've just said that we should be doing that on an ongoing basis, which we are. Not saying that we're not doing that sort of stuff. The team is constantly out of the network checking things. And so we're constantly doing that. I guess just because it comes up at the revaluation, they're just pointing out, make sure you're not just doing these sorts of things at revaluation time, which we're not. So that's the point on that one. On page 19, they've added a couple of additional unadjusted differences. So they previously just had the prior year one on there. They've got the two for the current year. The outstanding debt is not receivable is to do with the same one as last year. So that's to do with NKC. And that's just a difference of opinion between us and Deloitte as to the recoverability. of those debts. We think they are. They are less convinced than we are, I guess, is a good way to put it. So they record it. We don't adjust to reflect that because it's our annual report at the end of the day. We're the ones that think we get the money back. They just want to record that they have a different opinion. The first one there, the 256,000, the liabilities related to 26 that are in 25. So that came as a part of their testing. They pick our accounts payable at the end of the year, and they pick some samples out of it. A couple of the samples they picked were actually invoices that dated June, but they were technically July invoices. So it was, I think one of them was like IT services. It was actually, they invoiced us in June for the July contract payment. So that technically was put in the wrong year. We didn't pick it up as we went through our process because it was a relatively small amount. To get to the 256, they've taken the few that they found like that, sort of added that together. They did some additional testing because of that to make sure that it wasn't a widespread problem. And then they sort of take what our payables balance is and apply based on this percentage of their sample that had this problem. What does that potentially mean in terms of a total problem? Again, because it's just guesswork, we don't adjust it because we can't say for sure if that is the actual amount. We'd have to go through each individual invoice and nobody has the time to do that. And so they just put it, again, just a figure of what they think the approximate issue is. Obviously, that's not material as well. So if it was a material amount, if they thought it was $500,000, then we'd have to do the additional work. We'd have to make the adjustments. But in this case, it's not quite sufficient enough to make us do that work. And then the only other change is on page 20, which is just the outstanding matters at the bottom of that page. So they talk about what's still to go. And that's obviously been updated to reflect where we're actually at now, which is effectively the only things left is for council to approve the annual report. There's a subsequent events procedure. So they sent me an email making sure there's been nothing since the 30th of June that may have a material impact on our financial statements. So I just have to respond to that once we adopt, signing a representation letter, and then we've got to do a summary financial statements and the trustee reporting, which is to come in the next week or so. Trustee reportings will sign by Tanya, so we can actually do that even after the election. Doesn't cause us any issues. And that's basically the big changes in their report. So we're pretty much, I guess, to give an update, we're pretty much at the point where we're ready to sign off. There's just some last minute back and forth about just some minor little updates. There were some comments that the things that need to be fixed up that I fixed up last night. They then sent me some more just before midnight last night. I did those this morning, and now I've just sent the wrong page. So I've got to send that once we finish this report. But yeah, we're pretty much on there. In terms of the big changes that came out of the comments, there weren't a whole heap. It was mostly just spelling mistakes, and some of those they didn't find, but Councillor Jeffries sent through some of those, so I'm fixing those as well. Some additional information that was required. So in the version you had, there was a bit about accounting policy judgments around water. That's come out, but in the water section earlier on, when we talk about the changes and Waikato Water, we've updated that to reflect the fact that, because when this was first put together, we hadn't received, obviously, acceptance from DIA at that point, or the secretary. We've now got that, so we've reflected that. And then we've put in some additional information about the changes, or the potential that we don't know what the costs, what the values are of the assets and liabilities that will get transferred, all that sort of information yet. Excuse me. So we've put that in. Only one of our performance measures was deemed to be wrong, so we changed that. That was in wastewater. It was to do with compliance with resource consents. So we had put that there was one non-compliance. They actually emailed regional council directly, and regional council said actually there's none. So we've achieved that as opposed to not achieved. So it's a good change. We were probably being a bit more, I wouldn't say pessimistic, but we're being very open because we had an abatement notice the previous year that I believe was still, as I understand, is still potentially in effect, but the regional council doesn't think so. So let's take that win. The other changes were around, just not adding mistakes. So things, the problem when you work in thousands of dollars and round things is that the numbers are all right, but then when you actually, the total auto calculates because it's using the rounded numbers, but then when you actually physically add it up, it doesn't match. So just a lot of toing and froing and tidying those up. Yeah, apart from that, there was not too much else changed. All the page numbers have been fixed up and all those things that were highlighted yellow have been fixed. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. But just before we go to questions of Brendan from the committee, I can just tell you that Bruno is online watching.
Okay.
And I've been in touch with him as you've been talking to see whether there was anything that Bruno wanted to add, and well done, Brendan. He said no. He's made the point that that any errors that have been corrected are not material, and he feels they're pretty much, with a couple of tweaks, good to go. So first of all, Brendan, thank you for your work. No one really wants anyone to be working at midnight, so I appreciate the effort you've put in to get us to this point, so thank you on behalf of the committee. Could I just confirm two things before we get into questions from colleagues?
Yep.
The first is that to confirm the obvious, which is that the audit has not thrown up anything material that the council needs to be aware of. That's correct?
No, nothing material.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. And then the second question is, we've worked really hard, particularly you, to try and tick off the previous list of unfulfilled audit recommendations from previous years.
Yep.
When you think about the audit recommendations from previous years, are there any, Brendan, that have reoccurred in this year that lead you to think we need to make some changes to the way in which we do things? Or are the audit recommendations largely new or different items?
Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, of the recurring ones in here, some of them are ones we said we weren't going to do anything with in the first place, like the banking one, for example. We don't have any abilities to do anything on that.
Yeah.
Extensive register, it says it's reoccurring, but it's, I guess, a different issue to what it was last time. Last time we didn't have the processes in place. We now have those processes in place. It was just a timing issue of getting the work done because of various competing priorities throughout the building, both in my team and in Emma's assets team as well, because they had their changes to their RAM and all that sort of stuff. So they had to put stuff on hold, which then had flown off to us as well. And obviously, Waikato Water's taken up everyone's time. And everything else is pretty much new. So, I mean, the policy review, again, that's just an oversight that I missed the April. That the debt policy was due for review in April. I didn't get around to checking that, and then so those ones, nothing with the reoccurring stuff. And the new stuff again is pretty much, I think we're pretty happy with most of those, and we'll be able to work on those relatively easily. Great,
excellent. Okay, thank you, Brendan, and also I should also say thank you to Emma and her team as well. So I'm afraid that colleagues, you are very, very far away. And so if any of you would like to ask questions, Kaya, if you wouldn't mind directing the traffic, so to speak. Anyone have any questions of Brendan?
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Peter. This is Max here. Brendan, question in terms of Deloitte's contacting regional council in terms of compliance, is that typical practice?
I don't recall them having done it in the past. I guess that doesn't mean they haven't done it in the past. Emma was CC'd into that email. She mentioned to me this morning. So yeah, they didn't do it without us knowing. I didn't know personally, but Emma obviously was aware of it. I guess as an ex-auditor, you do try to get external confirmation as much as possible. And so there are other processes like legal confirmations from our lawyers to make sure there's no outstanding legal things or that sort of stuff. historically, depending on the nature, not so much with the council, but other types of businesses, they'll do debtor confirmations. So they'll email or write to someone and say, hey, we're doing this audit. They say that you owe them this much money. Can you confirm what it is? So they do a lot of that sort of stuff. Going to regional council, yeah, I'm not aware they've done it in the past, but I wouldn't say it's unusual.
Yeah, thank you. It does make sense, but it's the same as you. I've never heard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the other things, Your Worship, like they reviewed the Kiwi House's accounts as well to look at their ability to repay their loan. So I supplied all that information to them. So I guess that was their only way that they could actually test that. You know, just look at it from their point of view. So.
Thanks, Your Worship. Any other questions of Brendan before we get on in relation to the audit, before we get on to the annual report?
Yeah, I've got one now, Peter. Steve here. Hey, Brendan, I was just curious about your comment before on the difference of opinion with the auditors over the North King Country development. So,
Yeah.
what are they basing that on? Is it because they've just been overly cautious? Or,
Yeah.
Well, it's probably no surprise coming from an auditor, but yeah,
Yeah,
is that basically what it is?
Yeah, it's more, I guess it's a caution, yeah, being overly cautious. I guess it's not quite having the level of understanding of the various pieces of legislation that we have as to what avenues we have to ensure that the money is collectible. And they're obviously not as much over legislation as we are, so because they work for multiple different organisations.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yep.
Sorry, I know that the auditors asked for the letter that we sent to North King, the NKC. So we've given them our letter, but I don't think we gave them the letter from the lawyers of NKC that say they agree that the payment is what do you call it? They acknowledge that the money is owed.
I think the letter we sent them did say in it that we know in your letter that you.
Okay.
So
I was thinking, how much evidence, more evidence would auditors need than a letter from someone saying that they agree they're going to pay that amount?
Yeah, I guess it's just it's an over cautiousness from that point of view. Yeah.
What they generally do is that they would want you to take it to provision for doubtful debts.
Yes.
You know, so they were saying that there's a chance that we may not collect this. Not saying that we won't.
Yeah.
But that would be the accounting treatment that they expect. Yeah.
And then that's probably the adjustment they've actually put is that I should be recording as a potential doubtful debt. And I haven't because I don't think it's doubtful. But they think we potentially should be allowing for it.
Cool. Thanks for this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Morning, Peter. It's Kit here.
G'day, Kit.
Peter, I just wondered if Brendan or Bruno could just clarify of the document that we've received, the annual report document, not all of it is subject to audit, is it? So is it the front section or the back section that they don't worry about?
I mean, it's kind of the whole thing nowadays.
Is it?
So
even
obviously the financials are the main thing, but the statement of service performance, which is the front section where we've done all our performance measures, they do obviously have to sign off on that. So those are true and correct. Well, correct spray term for those. That's the old term. They have to sign off and say that they're happy that that is correct as well. So I guess really, if you think about what they're not signing off on, it's probably the very front bit where we have the mayor and chief exec's comments, and that first little bit about how we've done and all the nice stuff that we get to talk up how well we've done on things.
Yep.
And possibly some of the last bits about the directory and who the councillors are and that sort of stuff. They don't audit, they don't sign off on that.
Yep.
But really the financials, the notes of the financials, the graphs, the disclosures after the graphs, and most of the service performance stuff they do give an opinion on.
Yep, no, that's fine. That answers that. Thank you. Having just received the latest Deloitte report, we've only had a chance, a very brief opportunity to go through that, but I'll just park that one just for a moment. Brendan, the information that I sent through yesterday, I'm not
Yes.
going to dwell on that, but can I just get an assurance that, that you've been through and actually looked at all of those issues that were raised?
Yep. And well, Graham has as well, and obviously for those that are specific to other GMs, he's talked to them about it.
Yep.
But yeah, most of them, yeah, obviously the spelling mistakes and everything.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about those. I mean, that's just standard stuff. But there were some questions around, particularly around some of the key KPIs not being achieved.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, Kit, to interrupt. Are you talking about the annual report?
yes,
So we haven't got to that point yet. If you wouldn't mind, if we could just rule a line under the audit. So as far as I can see and as far as I can hear, and in my ongoing messaging with Bruno, he's happy, Brendan's happy. There are some, we're pretty much at the end of the audit in relation to the receivable about which there is a disagreement. Bruno makes the point that the reason they tagged it was they thought there was a risk that the debtor would be unable to pay, as Graham's articulated. Brendan has a different view. Obviously, those views are respected. And then just to add to Brendan's comment, Bruno makes the point that the auditors do read the front piece for consistency, but they don't issue an opinion on it. So with that, is everyone comfortable with where we're at in relation to the audit piece before we then turn to the annual report? Is everyone comfortable with that?
Pete, Mr. Chair, could I just add a comment? And this
Of
is
course.
just my thoughts is regarding the North King Country developments. If you were a ratepayer, that sort of exposes us a little bit, their comments in the audit, and clearly we've got no pushback on that, have we?
Well, I mean, yeah, what we obviously have, because it's an unadjusted difference, I guess, so we have pushed back, I guess, in our discussions with them. I guess nothing, well, there is now, it's now recorded as part of the minutes of the meeting that we push back from our point of view as well, I guess. But no, there's nothing in the document specifically about it. But you know, that's a valid point. Yeah.
So my sense of this is that in any commercial transaction, there always exists a counterparty risk, doesn't there? And fundamentally, the chief financial officer of the council believes that the debt is recoverable. I think we've got to respect that view. Equally, we've got to respect questions from the auditors as to are you really sure? But Councillor, I think your question's a really good one, but I think it just really reflects this pretty standard commercial risk in terms of counterparties that a counterparty that is not AAA investment grade rated. Does that address your question, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
so
Okay.
Peter, Kit again. So just to clarify, are we just dealing at the moment with the Deloitte report?
Correct.
Okay. So in that respect, then there are some items in there that are red flagged or orange flagged. So at some stage going forward, it would be good to be able to get some update from staff on what's been done to progress those or deal with those particular issues.
Yeah, and I guess those are probably something that in my going forward for the future Risk and Assurance Committee, when I do my management reporting on the control deficiencies that I identify later in the report, that I could also have a section talking about those where possible. Some of them obviously can't be sort of done until the next audit, or can't be addressed till the next audit, but I can speak to some of those in that report going forward.
That's good.
Kit, I wonder, because you raise a really good point, I wonder whether at the next committee meeting, making some assumptions about who might be sitting around the committee table. But at the next committee meeting, there's an opportunity both for us to have actually read the final audit report and to ask Brendan to just go through, as you say, those colour-coded items, just to provide assurance that they are in hand. Would that work for you?
Yep. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So Brendan, what I'm saying is before Christmas, making some assumptions about committee membership, etc. You'd be comfortable just taking us through the colour-coded sections of the audit report, just to provide some assurance that you have those matters in hand. Is that okay with you?
I mean, yes, I'm
Through
happy
you,
to do that
Chair.
in the next meeting.
Sorry,
Right.
can I speak through you,
Yeah.
Chair? We have
course.
no plans to have a risk and assurance committee meeting before Christmas. So, yep, we are trying to streamline our induction process. We thought at the very least the committee might get together to discuss the work plan in a workshop kind of mode. Work plan, the risk matrix, the strategic risks, that kind of thing. But we had no plan to put a full agenda together, just trying to manage the workload for my staff for that full risk and assurance.
I think that's, thank you very much for pointing that out. I'm completely relaxed with that, Tanya, because, and with the idea of a workshop, because what I've just proposed, I think, is well suited to a workshop environment. You know, at the end of the day, the audit report has been provided. Brendan and his team have had substantial input into it. It's very much a case of looking forward to say, these things have been noted, how are we going to address them?
Yep.
So I think that's perfectly suited to a workshop environment and perfectly suited, frankly, to an induction type setting. Are you okay with that?
Yep, that sounds great. Thanks.
Excellent.
That's a good way forward, Peter. Thank you. And
Thank you.
Brendan's nodding his head vigorously down.
Excellent. No, thanks, Tanya, for making that point. We don't want to overburden staff, but I do think as part and parcel of the induction of whoever might be on the committee, this would be a really good starting point, because it's a bit of a refresher about the sort of work program Brendan's got looking forward in terms of what came out of this year's audit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn now to the draft annual report. And this is the only item for decision, and the recommendation is that this committee recommends that the council approve the annual report. And I also think, Kaya, from memory, the management representation letter, is that correct?
What? Yes, the management letter or the representation letter also needs to be signed by the mayor. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That representation letter is not attached, is it?
No, I only received that this morning and I didn't
Okay.
actually read it here, sorry.
All right. No, it's not your fault. That's absolutely fine. So I would have thought that the only thing the committee could do is to recommend the approval of the annual report, because we don't have a management letter in front of us. Would you agree with that, Brendan?
Yep, that's reasonable.
Okay, so let's turn now to the annual report in draft. I think we saw the latest as at, I think it was Monday, Brendan. Have there been any material changes since Monday, leaving aside tweaks and changes in format and all that sort of stuff, leaving those aside, any material changes?
No, so in terms of the numbers haven't materially changed. It's just rounding issues.
Right.
As I talked about earlier, there was that one performance measure that we've upgraded from not achieved to achieved.
Yeah.
Added some additional information in about Waikato Waters and the impact, and now we don't know the financial impact of that at this point, and what our date is for transition, all that sort of information. We've also, it's kind of a throwaway bit, but we've added a line in that explains that for people that are looking at it when they're trying to compare last year's information, that's all been regrouped to match the new groups of activities from the LTP. And so it's a bit difficult to compare. If you took last year's annual report document and this year's document, they look completely different. The last year's figures, because they're all grouped differently. So we put a comment in for that to make it easier for the readers to understand that. Apart from that, yeah. And then just all the formatting fixes and
Thanks, Brendan.
changes.
I'll leave my questions till the end because they really are about a helicopter view about what the annual report tells us about the state of the organisation and the various trends. So I want to ask a general question to you, and Graham and Tanya will be more than welcome to pitch in, but I'll leave those questions to the end. Let's just focus on the drafting of the annual report first. Kit, was there anything in relation to the drafting of the annual report that you wanted to address?
I sent through, I think I copied you into the email that I sent yesterday, Peter, with my comments attached. A lot of it was really just to do with wording changes and grammatical stuff, but there were some questions around KPIs, and I just wondered whether, and I'm not suggesting that it's too late to do anything about it now, but going forward, rather than having just a result that says not achieved, it might be useful perhaps to just offer some explanation as to what were the circumstances that caused that situation. And I'm not trying to create more work, but I'm just saying that as far as a readability goes, for someone who just picks this document, looks at it and says such and such wasn't achieved, and they look and they say, well, why wasn't it achieved? What was the reason for that? So that was just one comment. And I did have some other questions around some of the figures. Peter, just to put my own situation, I'm not available this afternoon at the council meeting. I've got a family funeral to attend. And so I just want to make sure that this committee and Brendan and Tanya and so on are getting all the information that they can from this meeting to take forward into the council meeting, because I certainly won't be there to add to it.
Thank you, Kit. First of all, condolences, and secondly, totally understand. Was there anything, particularly considering you're not going to be at the full council meeting, is there anything in particular that you wanted Brendan or Graham or Tanya to address arising out of the annual report that you think would be helpful to float now?
Mr. Chair, if I could just jump in there. So Brendan and I had a quick run through this morning, and a large majority of your changes, Kit, were picked up by Deloitte as well. So they were in the 5 to midnight change. So and I've also been just with your queries on performance targets, etc. Just had a quick corridor with the leadership team this morning, so we can probably answer those in a written format subsequent to this meeting. We have got answers for all of those.
Right, I was thinking perhaps that some of the councillors at the meeting this afternoon may ask. Yeah, so just be prepared, that's all. Yep, fair enough. Okay. And just things of interest, Peter, like on page, where is it? Page 120 of 145. And these are just minor things, but I'm just interested as to why suddenly the formatting changed, where we're now showing figures in red with brackets around them. Whereas it seems to be the only statement in the whole document that's like that. So I just wondered what the reason for the change was.
There was a formatting thing. That's actually been sort of resolved now. So there's more statements that have negatives in red. The equity one has that in. The reserves under that, and some of the other parts of the document have the same thing in. but there's not too many places where we have negatives. So yeah, but that is, the consistency has been put into that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were one or two figures missing, I thought, Brent, which I gather you've addressed those.
Yes, the lawyer picked those up as well.
Right. So no, other than that, I think probably I thought that, you know, as a document, it read very well, and it's certainly formatted well. There's a lot of it, and I think Peter, you yourself asked whether or how much of this document was actually required legally. So perhaps I'll leave Brendan or Graham to respond to that one, but other than that, no, I think most of the questions that I had, I've actually summarised in that document I sent through yesterday. And I'll leave it at that in the meantime. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before we go to questions from Kathy and Stephen and His Worship, is there, Graham, Brendan, did you want to comment on the length of the annual report? I should say that I did some research overnight, and we are not alone in having reports in the hundreds of pages, but there's not necessarily always safety in numbers. And so I'm interested in your view about effectively what, 1 page for every 3 days of the past year?
Yeah. I guess there's two parts to it. One is in terms of what's required under the legislation or accounting standards.
Exactly.
Pretty much everything that's in here is required in some way or form under some bit of legislation. I guess the only bits we don't need is sort of the directory and who the councillors are and the comments from the chief executive and mayor at the front. But those sort of things you do want to put in, because obviously it gives you a chance to explain those things. So I guess the other part is it's probably a formatting thing. So we could get this page numbers down by making the tables a bit smaller and therefore fitting 2 tables on a page as opposed to 1, and, you know, make the font smaller. And that would obviously reduce the size, but you also want to make it readable and look good. And it's that balancing act, I guess, making sure that, yeah, it's readable, presentable, and not just here's all the information, you know, looking ugly.
That's fair. That's a good response. It's a fair response, and I guess it simply make the point that it's yet another unfunded mandate from central government for, to be honest, an audience of 1, and Bruno's already read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what happens, Mr. Chair, too, is that every year there's new accounting standards and you know, new disclosures that are required, and you know, when councils moved to international financial reporting standards a number of years ago, I mean, there's copious amounts of changes that come as a result of that, and you know, we're just forced to comply, basically, because that's what we're audited against.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in effect paying for those boondoggles to 5-star hotels in Switzerland. Okay. Councillors Prendergast, Hughes, Your Worship, do you have any questions you want to ask in relation to the drafting of the annual report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not really so much a question, but just my musings again was, you know, this report is telling the story of the Ōtorohanga District Council for the year, and reading it through with a ratepayer lens. I felt disappointed for the management team with so many not achieved, and I do agree with Councillor Jeffries that I think a short explanation would be great, but then of course we're going to be adding to the number of pages here, which is, and exactly, so I've got really nothing more to add except that those of us that have walked the walk, we understand a lot of the why behind those points, and I think we have got a lot to celebrate in the last year. It doesn't necessarily come through this report. Yeah.
Interesting observation. Thank you. Councillor Hughes, anything?
No, I haven't, Chair. I agree with everyone else. It is quite long. I would think that the average person who picks it up would see that many pages and probably get a glassy look in their eyes, I would say. So many will not understand it. I mean, it's a pretty comprehensive piece of work. So how many people would actually fully read this? I would state probably not many, but because it is what we have to do.
Yeah.
It's overall, I think it's pretty good. Thank you.
I should just say before I go to His Worship that Bruno makes the very good point that one way of reducing volume is actually to reduce the number of your performance measures.
Yeah.
And he makes the point that South Waikato did that last year. It's a very interesting point, Brendan, and I don't need an answer now, but it might be something for you and Graham to muse about in terms of whether you need as many service performance measures as you have.
Yeah, and I guess that comes through the long-term plan process. Obviously, we can't change it now.
Correct.
In the middle of this long-term plan. Obviously, the next long-term plan is going to be different anyway, and we're not going to have water and wastewater. We do obviously have all those mandatory measures that are in those, as well as stormwater, flood protection, and land transport. So those will move, which will obviously make the document shorter anyway. I guess it is a balancing act for council to decide, between, less performance measures, but more ability to be able to tell the community what we're doing or what we're trying to do and we're trying to achieve. And so if you don't have those performance measures there, then you've got to do that in other ways. Whereas if you have the performance measures in place, then obviously you can report it through here. So I guess that will be for the new council as part of their next long-term plan to have that discussion.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, Brendan. Thank you. Your Worship, any questions in relation to the drafting of the annual report?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. No questions. I think everybody's covered it, but I just want to thank Brendan for his hard work, tenacity, dedication, and the fact that we've got this across the line, I believe, once we put it to the vote, within 2 days of the end of the training. So it's really good to get this out of the way so the new council isn't burdened by the responsibility. And that's only come through working late at night. So thank you very much for your work in this, and to anybody in the team that's assisted you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship. So, Brendan, if I just turn to my questions, I just remember the earliest and possibly best business advice I ever received was from some grizzled old guy who said to me, I'd never forget that this business runs on cash flow. Yep. So with that in mind, it's the best advice I've ever received. So I'm just asking you to think about this from a helicopter perspective. We've got total revenue dropping. We've got personnel and maintenance costs going up. You've got CapEx and maintenance commitments going up. We've got some not achieved targets, and we've got increased depreciation as a result of the roading network valuation increase. Are you still comfortable with the rising personnel and capital cost in a flat revenue environment? And do you think that the service delivery performance results suggest there might be some underlying capacity issues? I mean, what are the numbers? You've got the best overview of anyone in terms of the numbers. Those are the trends that I've just outlined. Sorry, they're not the trends. They're the data points that you take from the annual report. Do any of those give you any material concerns?
No. I mean, yeah, CapEx can fluctuate quite a lot. And obviously in the last 12 months, we've had a significant wastewater mains renewals project going on.
Yeah.
So that's why that's up, or, quite a high figure comparatively. Revenue being down, obviously part of that, if you're comparing to budget, a lot of that is probably because of the roading subsidy that we're not getting anymore, that we had budgeted for, because obviously we didn't know until after we'd adopted the LTP that we weren't getting that money. So again, that's been factored into this year's annual plan and will be into next year's annual plan, obviously. So I'm not uncomfortable about the reducing revenue. Employee expenses and that sort of stuff. I mean, I guess that's not my place to comment because I'm not making those decisions. Yeah, but I mean, in terms of the dollar amounts, it's not, I don't think it's not unexpected, I guess, from the journey that we've been on over the last few years.
So what you're saying, as the head of financial operations, you don't think that those data points that I've just outlined gives you cause for any material concern? They are data points, but they don't give rise to a material concern, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of the other point you raised was around obviously performance measures that we haven't achieved.
Yeah.
Part of that may be down to the reasons why we didn't achieve them. Some of the survey results, for example, well, you know, we can only do so much to influence public perception. And we think we're doing the right thing, but it's only when we get those survey results we might find actually we're not. And so then we have to pivot. In terms of some of the things, for example, around the attendance in the water space, I know we have had quite a few resourcing issues during the year in terms of people being off sick, vacancies in that department and stuff. So that's probably not helped. And that's obviously something that is being addressed or is working on being addressed, and obviously will also become an interesting thing when water transitions away from us and not be, I guess, our concern anymore. So even the performance measures does not, I don't think there's too many issues there as well in terms of those data points.
Yeah. If I could just make a comment as well, Mr. Chair, for us, I guess, certainly in the timeline of this long-term plan, we've grappled with rates increases and we've used every possible lever that we could use to try and keep those at a manageable level, including using surpluses from previous years, including not fully funding depreciation, and the impact of that will show in the accounts. You know, we were showing deficits, and so we're not meeting our expenditure levels with the required amount of revenue. So we've had to use other means, and so it's a problem that every council in the country has grappled with this last couple of years. So that's just the position that we're in.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Graham. Tanya, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I guess I'm wondering what page you're looking at in terms of the comments you made on employee costs.
Sure. Pages 96 through 111. 96, 97.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, I mean, I'm absolutely not questioning the cost rises. That's a matter of judgment for the chief executive. All I'm doing is, having had a conversation about the drafting of the annual report, I simply stood back and asked myself, what does this tell me about this organisation? And are there any data points that might create or signal risk to the organisation? Hence my question to Brendan about whether he is worried about those collection of data points, and his responses are not in a material sense. So that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, I've asked the question, Brendan's answered it, and I'm comfortable with that.
Peter, if I can just add in here as the council chair, look, we know how tight things are in local government at the moment. We know the absence of that FAR rating, or the drop in the FAR rating, was had a fairly huge impact on what we're doing with our funding. So I think what's happened around our council table, and certainly with the staff, these conversations are always live. And I think also as a council, we're fairly agile when it comes to changing. With staff, we had the direction going forward that we needed to get up to capacity. Tanya and I are talking on a daily basis about when staff are leaving, do they get replaced? Where is the resource needed going forward? So I think you can be confident that there's always that ongoing discussion between governance and management about what's the best way to strategise going forward, being acutely aware of the challenges within local government at the moment. So, as the chair, I'm really happy with where we've got to, where we are, and we have the ability to adapt where needed.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's comforting. Okay, so unless anyone has anything else, then the
Well, Peter, yeah, look, I totally agree with what your comments is. Countless boards that I've been on and councils have always drilled into me that cash is king. And so the question that I posed to Brendan prior to the meeting was he comfortable with the fact that our available cash facility at the end of June was sufficient to carry us forward, given in mind the level of our carryovers and work in progress and so on. So he gave me that assurance. So I hear what you're saying and I totally agree with it. So, yep.
great, thank you. Okay, so I will put the motion that we as a committee recommend to the council that they adopt the 30 June 2025 annual report. I'll move that. Would someone like to second that?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Great, thanks, Kit. Is everyone happy to so recommend? Anyone opposed? Okay, so that's been carried. So unless there's anything else, can I just again, first of all, thank Bruno for being online, listening and sending me messages in the course of this meeting. Secondly, as previously mentioned, pass on our thanks as a committee, not only to Brendan and Graham, but also to Emma as well for the work they've done and the effort they've put in to get us to this point before the close of the triennium. Does anyone else have anything else before we close the meeting?
Yeah, I'll just look. I know Brendan's been thanked by the committee, Mr. Chair, but as his direct manager, I would just like to express my thanks as well. And I've probably got more of an appreciation than anybody at the amount of work that goes into this and to get it across the line. It's always difficult in an election year when we have one less month, and it's every year that it's more and more work involved as there's more and more disclosures and so yeah, thanks Brenda, for getting that done. So it's certainly appreciated.
Nicely put, Graham. Thank you. So on
And
that,
then I guess I would just like to say thanks to the rest of the organisation, because it's not just me putting it together. While I do the actual document, everyone else is involved in reporting on their service performance measures and all that sort of stuff, giving me information, making sure, helping answer the auditor's questions. So it's thanks to everyone in the organisation, not just to me.
good. Thank you. Okay. Well, on that positive note, thank you all for your attendance. Thank you for making time to do this special edition, and we will see you on the other side of the triennium. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.